Hi guys, so today just want to go over some news stories that I've read about, and I'll crack on. So the first one is a news story in the BBC News, which is about a ban on diesel and petrol vehicles that they hope, or the government hopes, will be brought in by 2040 in the UK. Now, this sounds like a fantastic idea. It will cut down on CO2 emissions, and that's always a great thing. But I see problems to this, and they are problems which I don't think will be seen to by then. So, where I am, for example, I can't always park my car next to where I live. And with having a petrol car, that's fine. It doesn't make a difference. But if I have an electric car and I need to charge it overnight, then that means that I have to have some sort of charging station or a charging plate under a parking space that is either next to my flat or is in every single space. And it's doable, don't get me wrong, but I don't see landlords and kind of new builds having that feature, and that's going to be a problem. Now, it's going to be a problem if your work also doesn't have charging stations or charging facilities for a car. And yes, just over 20 years sounds like a huge amount of time to get stuff like that done, but it really isn't. Not when you're talking about changing the infrastructure of how people actually get around the country or the world. And that's then another problem. If the UK manages to do this and manages to scrap petrol and diesel cars by 2040, what also is going to happen if I want to go abroad? It means that all the other countries have to have the same infrastructure in place, and they're not going to have that. For example, if I take a road trip to France, they might. Germany, same. But America, for example, is a far larger place, and there are lots of places in America where having charging stations that are connected to the mains power systems, at least, just will not be feasible, which means that the country is going to have to invest in solar power heavily to make sure that people can actually charge their cars. Now, like I said, it's not a bad idea at all, but I really don't think that it is going to work. It's not going to work in a way that actually means that electric vehicles are feasible. And unfortunately, it will mean that there will probably be quite a few incidents of people driving and realising that their battery's low, and all of a sudden being in a very, very sticky situation. Now, a few ways that you can get around this is by greater investment in battery technology, and that is one thing that a lot of companies are doing anyway. Elon Musk's company, Tesla, they're investing huge amounts of money in new battery technologies to make sure that their cars can run for further and not have to be charged as often. And that's always a great thing. But also, another way that you can kind of, or could potentially get around it, is combine these solar panel cars that have been seen as a bit of a gimmicky thing and only kind of had very small exposure, and you could almost coat the car in solar panels. And yes, I'm not saying it would be enough to charge your battery completely, and it's heavily dependent on weather and conditions of the panels and things like that, but it would at least help to mitigate some of the problems. If you could have it so your car could charge constantly while you're out and about, it would be fantastic. And if you could have it so you could charge at a station and through solar panels at the same time, even better. But all in all, I don't really see it as working. I think it's going to be a big problem, and I think that oil companies are going to get very, very angry at it. And it's just one of those things that unfortunately I don't think the infrastructure is there to allow it to work just yet. I think that we need to make sure the infrastructure is there first before putting bans and such on petrol and diesel vehicles being made or sold. So that's the first story. The second one I want to have a look at is UK mobile coverage. So there's been a list released of the coverage winners. So the top networks within the UK, and it states the availability of 4G services. So not 3G or 2G, 4G. Apparently, EE have a 91% availability. Vodafone have an 83% availability. O2 have an 82% availability, and 3 have a 69% availability. Now, I particularly find that odd in that I'm not certain on this, but I am pretty sure that EE and O2 technically are owned by the same company. I wouldn't like to state that for fact, but it doesn't quite make sense. But personally, I found that 4G coverage is actually still pretty spotty. And not only that, I think the problem is that the speed you get on 4G isn't necessarily the speed you expect. Now, 4G is touted as this super fast wireless internet service, and yet I find that accessing web pages and such still is quite slow. Now, I don't know if it's a case that my phone doesn't necessarily support everything, and it is a bit of an old phone, it's a Nexus 5, but it does support 4G, and I just find it odd that in today's age 4G speeds are still surprisingly slow. I mean, for me, for example, my upload speed is far, far greater than my download speeds, and you kind of want it to be the other way. You want your download speeds to be as high as possible, yet your upload speeds generally won't mind, because you're not going to be uploading a lot of stuff from your phone, really. Yes, pictures and maybe a video or two into Google Photos or Dropbox or whatever cloud storage you use, but it just seems a bit odd. Also, I've generally found that certain companies, so where I am, which is in the countryside a bit, and I'm on giffgaff, which runs on O2's network. It's be pretty good as far as general coverage goes. 4G is a bit patchy, and I can't say I've ever been with Vodafone, but from the people that I've spoken to, their coverage is pretty shoddy. And then I found out a while ago that the emergency services over here use Vodafone, which kind of surprises me, because surely you would want the emergency services to be on a network that encompasses the whole of the UK. You kind of hope that they could almost tap into every single network available to make sure that no matter where they are, they can always be contacted. But hey ho. And the last story I wanted to look at was to do with what's the most secure way to lock your smartphone. Now, I've generally always gone with a pattern lock on my phone, mainly because I find it easier to remember a pattern than I do a set of numbers. Now, some people it will be completely the way around, but patterns can be confusing as well. Now, what I will say is, if you don't use any security on your phone, you're just being a bit silly there. You should always have a pin or a pattern or some form of security set up on your phone to make sure that if you lose it, somebody can't just go straight in, access all the files on your phone, access your banking apps or anything like that. And yes, most banking apps have a second level of security that you've got to log into them with a separate system, but it does make it more difficult for people to break into your phone. Generally, it means if they are going to break into your phone, they will have to root it or flash a new version of the operating system onto the phone, which will wipe all of the data on there anyway. Now, that can be a problem in that if you are trying to track down your phone using Find My Phone or Android Device Manager, then if they wipe it quickly, you then only have its last location when it was on your account. And they could do that. They could flash it in an internet cafe or out in the middle of nowhere and then just move away. Which means that, unfortunately, at that point, your phone is gone. More than likely. But there are a couple of cool things that you can do with security on your phone, especially on Android, for example, which I use. And one is the kind of trusted security options. So you can have a trusted device, which means that if your phone is near a trusted device, such as an Android watch or your computer or your laptop, then it will remain unlocked until you move out of range of it. You can have a trusted location, which I use at home. So when I'm at home, I don't have to go through the faff of unlocking my phone all the time. But as soon as I leave my house, I have to unlock it. Which means that, yes, it's a bit easier for convenience purposes, but it does mean that I don't have to go through the faff of unlocking my phone while I'm at home. But there were a couple of things that I thought were quite nifty as far as hacking phones goes. And oddly enough, one that I hadn't thought about, which ties into the method I use, which is a pattern lock, is looking at smudges on the screen. Hackers or phone thieves will look at the smudges on a phone and try to figure out if there are patterns there that match up with the pattern lock. Now, you could get really paranoid about this and be cleaning your phone constantly, or wear gloves and things like that so you don't get any oil smudges on there. And if you want to, that's your choice. It seems a bit overkill, as I think most smudges at least will kind of be wiped away or at least kind of disbanded mostly through general use. But it's good to know that it happens. There are a couple of other options for phone security, and my phone doesn't support them, but one is fingerprint scanning, which has had its ups and downs. For example, the iPhone, when it was first released, there were reports of people's cats unlocking their phones, and that wasn't a good bit of news for Apple. It's gotten better since then. The scanners have gotten more accurate and can now distinguish between a human being and a cat, which is always great. But Apple, unfortunately, have then brought in a system whereby if your fingerprint scanner breaks or something like that and you get it repaired at a non-Apple repair centre, then that is your warranty gone. But not only that, it can also brick your phone, which is always good. Now another one as well is iris scanning, and my other half uses a Samsung S8. It's had very poor experience with this in that it doesn't like her glasses, or it just doesn't work. It doesn't like the lighting, so it's quite faffy. So 9 times out of 10 she doesn't actually use it, which doesn't really bode well for the technology. But not only that, there have been reports where iris scanners have been gotten round by having a picture of the person, or being able to kind of copy somebody's kind of retinal pattern using a photo. Now that's not very good. In one way you could potentially get around it is kind of being able to look at reflections and things like that and figure out if it's a picture or an actual person. Maybe use some sort of laser autofocus system to kind of pick up on if it's looking at a person or just a picture of a person. But that's for people more far smarter than I am. But yeah, so that's a few stories that I thought I'd look at today. Hope you enjoyed it, and have a good day.